We started Rich because most data on the web is terrible. It's just terrible. We really are focused on embedded analytics, and that means putting analytics in a web browser, whether that be embedded in somebody's product or on a website or what have you.
What do you mean by that? And what's going on inside a ridge? What are you building?
This is what we call a ridge. And I just got to show off the performance right away because it is kind of insane what you can do. What we've also done is paired it with a data agent. Now, people have seen data agents. There's a lot of data agents out there, but what's interesting about putting a data agent and a dashboard together on the same backing data is that you can actually link across these two.
Let's make sense of this.
Let's make sense.
Sensemakers.
Hey, Ellie.
Hey, Keith, how's it
Hey,
going?
Ellie. Hey, doing great. Man, I'm so glad that we've got you on the show because we've been inching closer on LinkedIn recently, and I've seen everything that you're putting out about harnesses and everything that you're doing with agentic programming. You're at a new place right now. You're building a new product, and it's super curious. And so I thought we would just explore a little bit. What is it that you're up to there at Ridge?
We started Rich because most data on the web is terrible. It's just terrible. And, I was at Tableau for a long, long time. It's how I got to meet you guys. And we helped people put embedded analytics out there. And I think it was good for at the time, but the performance was slow and it was very expensive, big learning curve. After I left Tableau, I went to a mid-market SaaS company where I was leading product, and it was existential for us to get data on the web in a good way inside our product so that we could show people the value we were creating for them. And it was just really hard. We ended up bringing in Databricks, which is a great product, but we had to put an acceleration layer on top. We had to build everything. And, it took us over a year and a bunch of learning curves and a bunch of money to get what I considered decent embedded analytics in product. And when I left there, I started talking to my co-founder, Jeff Hare, and we were just kind of ruminating on how bad it is. Jeff Hare, my co-founder, had done some amazing work with browser-based interactivity and data. And I had some ideas about how we could apply AI to take the learning curve out and help people get the long tail of answers. And we both had some ideas about composability. And we started Ridge because we were tired of data on the web being terrible. It can be great. The tools are available to make it great. And that's what we set out to do.
Nice. Okay, well, composability is all the rage these days. Everybody's talking about headless BI and being able to compose your stack. It's something that we're talking about quite a bit in terms of like what are data leaders going to do with their analytics stack. They've got big platforms like Tableau. They're thinking, do I extend this thing? Do I replace it? The conclusion that we've mostly reached is it's a both and. Right? There's a lot of value in everything that they've invested into Tableau so far. There's a lot of value to be harvested by continuing to extend it. And plausibly, probably, there are going to be places where they can peel off certain use cases and get that composable BI architecture going in a way that really hits a niche use case by use case. And so it sounds like that is what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really are focused on embedded analytics, and that means putting analytics in a web browser, whether that be embedded in somebody's product or on a website or what have you. And, I was part of that product at Tableau, and it had a lot of problems at the time. I mean, I loved what we did, but it was really hard to get something great in a web browser. Now with things like DuckDB, obviously AI, the Mosaic open source, we can do so much more. And on the composability point, I mean, it is important to have centralization of your data, of your semantics. Make sure your transforms are correct. Those things are really, really important. We think about analytics as kind of a human data interface, for lack of a better word, and it should sit cleanly on top of those things.
Yeah, well, you said two things. You said DuckDB and Mosaic.
Yeah.
Those are two words that I might not understand. What do you mean by that? And what's going on inside a Ridge? What are you building?
Let me share my screen. So I mentioned that there were all these problems with embedded analytics. This is what we call a ridge. And I just got to show off the performance right away because it is kind of insane what you can do. DuckDB is a small database running in browser here, and Mosaic is an open source library that my co-founder created that lets you do really crazy interactivity in browser. So you can ask questions like, what are the most common actions by users and departments? And you can get all of that very quickly. What we've also done is paired it with a data agent. Now, people have seen data agents. There's a lot of data agents out there, but what's interesting about putting a data agent and a dashboard together on the same backing data is that you can actually link across these two. So I'm going to link these two up now, and I've asked a question about locations that doesn't appear on my dashboard, by the way, but is in the backing data. And I can actually use the interactive tools and affordances and selections in my dashboard to select over here and ask questions over here. And what's amazing about that is a couple of things. One, I think we are on the cusp of so much innovation about how people work with data, and I think data agents are part of that. I don't think they replace storytelling in a dashboard and so on, but I think they can complement it. That's one thing that's really amazing here. I think another thing is that you get to use all the elements of the dashboard and then complement your thinking with the data agent. And in fact, the data proliferation problem that we've seen so many people have, where they have 1,000 dashboards and 6 of them get looked at. You really want to think about, what are the 6 dashboards we need? What are the 6 domains we need to have a story told around? And then that becomes kind of the head of your analytics, and the long tail is done here in a data agent.
So there's a couple different things that you're sharing that I find really fascinating. One is this: the agent isn't sitting off to the side and generating a static image that can lead to another question. The agent is actually interactive, tied in with the dashboard that's been created, and that cross-filtering, and it's super fast. Like we're not waiting 30 seconds for a round trip between the AI and the question as well. So it's that cycle of visual analytics that we know in the traditional building a dashboard, we're defining the questions in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And that long tail that you talk about of all those follow-up questions that people have on the dashboard, it's been frustrating in different tools because of that, those decisions made, or the data is not ready for the kinds of questions that people are trying to answer. So I'm curious about how is this, on the kind of authoring side, how is this configured to support this kind of interaction?
Yeah, great question. And before we go there, I do want to say we can handle multiple million rows in the browser, which is interesting. And you do want to have a data set behind this ridge, the dashboard, and the data agent that makes sense, right? You're not, even though it can take a lot of data, you don't want to put everything in here. You want to put related data because, of course, we know that working with related data helps us understand different facets of the data.
So I'm picking up from that the data preparation piece is super important, because you mentioned earlier we shouldn't necessarily have every dashboard author doing the join at the dashboard layer. Instead, what you're saying is, hey, let's do our data engineering downstream in dbt, prepare a gold layer data set that's got those couple million records. It's not constrained. You can do a lot with a couple million records, but just have it be prepared and then inject that thing into the browser so that the user can interact both with the pre-prepared visual analytics and have a conversation to answer the questions around it, all from that one prepared data set.
Exactly. That's right. And that's where we think about composability, is you're really using that gold data, you're using all the things you've already created, and you're putting a composable layer on top. And I'll show you how we're building this. As we build, I want you to keep in mind that we've designed this to actually be run by APIs as well. So you could think of, instead of doing this as in a UI as we're about to do here, doing it at the end of an agentic workflow where you've created some data set, you have some context about that data set, and you want to create a view into that data for somebody somewhere who needs to understand it.
Oh, I love it. So in your world, a ridge is a dashboard. Is that right?
It's a dashboard plus a data agent.
A dashboard plus the conversational agent, plus the agent on the side. And so at the end of my agentic programming workflow, where I'm producing the data set, I could just have my coding agent also produce the ridge by articulating the very same things that I would have done in the browser, but through the APIs.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we go through the process, I think you'll see how the context is really at a high level. It's a business level. We're trying to reach people or agents who don't necessarily have all the skills to go build a Tableau or don't want to spend an hour doing it. Right? So they want to engage on the questions they want to ask and answer. You guys mentioned the cycle of visual analytics. We're trying to get people to think at a different level of abstraction. Not, is this a bar chart or is this a line chart and where do I put the X and et cetera, but really think about, what am I trying to achieve here? And so I'll show you that now. We're in Ridge now, and we're looking at some data about product adoption, some product that's being used. And you can see we get an interactive preview, which, again, cycle of visual analytics, you don't know if it's the right data until you see it.
Right, I've got my profiling right up there. It's wicked fast, Ellie.
Yep, this is it. This is the data I want. And I'm going to go ahead and say, let's have a new dashboard. So you see that same preview, and now on the left, you see what we call the build agent. We could add context. I think people are familiar with context at this stage, but I'm going to go ahead and say, let's build. And the build agent has already looked at my data and said, hey, we know this data is about some kind of usage of some product. So let's suggest some purposes. I'm actually not going to take the ones that are suggested. I'm going to say I want to understand adoption by department. Maybe I'm selling this product and it's really important that every department adopts it, but they adopt it at different rates. So I'm trying to understand adoption. So given that, the build agent is going to say, well, okay, you're looking at adoption. Let's give you some suggestions for what does that mean to you. To me, adoption means, are people using it? Are their actions being recorded? I'm not so worried about successful actions. I'm definitely interested in how long they're in there. Maybe I'm interested in total active users as well. Those are...
Oh, and you just clicked a little button to say, give me more things to think about.
Correct.
Can I just jump in on how brilliant this is? I'm just like this. This is best practices for building an analytic to support other people in this embedded analytics environment. Like, we have a purpose for it. What are the kinds of numbers we care about? Those are questions that we'll ask as practitioners, but people who haven't necessarily done it before don't know. And they're like, I just think maybe I need a chart or something. And I find this part is really key for giving the AI the context that it needs to do something well. Because it's when somebody just types in, analyze this data, the AI goes off and does interesting stuff, but not necessarily useful. This is keeping it really useful.
And the other thing that she mentioned is that the focus of the analyst has been elevated to the question that I'm answering.
And there's a secondary piece to me with this of they can still see the data as well there. So it's not just a chat interface where they're trying to imagine what the data looks like and everything. There's that right-hand window, they can see the data, and the left hand working out what's going to happen next.
And I think that's critical. I think that you have to be able to see the data. One of the most powerful things AI can do is lift us in that abstraction. And you'll see as we go on, we're trying to bake in best practice about the questions, as you mentioned, Jonathan, and also the visualizations themselves. Because I love this best practice. I know you guys are experts in it, but most people aren't, and they don't have time to take a course, and it takes a while, but they still deserve great analytics. And so we're trying to build that in. I'm going to go ahead and answer the last question here, which is, starting from that purpose and going to what are the metrics, what are the questions this specific dashboard should answer? And of course, we know that a good dashboard does answer questions. So let's choose some of those. I'm interested in the weekly trend of actions for each department. Again, not so much failure rates. Let's look at resource types. I'll get a few more. And I can type in here as well.
Right. I can bring my own question, but if I'm struggling with the empty canvas, the AI is going to assist me with questions I could ask.
Right. So I can change this question.
Oh, and you're modifying it right in place.
Right there.
Yeah, because we know that we can suggest good questions based on our understanding of what's in the data, but you can never suggest all the questions. And so you need to be able to do that. So I'll choose just a few of these, and I might ask a correlation question too. What's the correlation of average duration and actions by user? Maybe for each user. Gets most of my spelling errors, but let's see. And we'll take a couple more just to make sure we've got a lot in there. Median action duration sounds great. And so I go ahead and say those are the questions I want to answer, and you'll start to see on the right filters come in and headline numbers come in. And the filters are specific to the questions I asked. Notice that we don't have failure rate because I didn't care about failure rate in that case. But we're seeing some what I would call best practice visualizations, line charts, time trends are line charts. We've got some stacked bar charts. We asked a correlation question and we got a scatter plot, and everything is interactive out of the gate. And so I can ask questions like, what's the highest average duration? And I can go ahead and save this. I could modify it. Perhaps there's one or two of these I didn't like, or I wanted to change things around a bit. I could delete these, change titles, and I can save it and go see what my end user would see. And now we'll see that data agent, just like we saw in the published version.
We talked a lot about it, but we went from prompt to dashboard, usable dashboard with interactivity in maybe 2 minutes.
And the responsiveness is so fast because everything's happening in the browser. So there's no round trip to go through some server and leave the local machine and come back. I'm working with that one prepared data set that was constructed in order to answer this type of question.
Exactly. We are reaching out for AI. So in the build agent and as we construct the SQL in the data agent, we do reach out for AI. And then we do a bunch of validation. And then the charts are semi-deterministic so that we can incorporate those best practices. But, generating this SQL was an AI action that was then validated. And so there is something reaching out of the browser, but all the computation is happening locally. And that's how we get the performance.
Yep. And then to your point, Ellie, the best practices, not only did we go, from prompt to dashboard in a couple of minutes, but the colors are good, the layout is good, you've got the right chart type for the right question, and all of those best practices just were there as a lift or an assist without me having to concern with them.
Right. And I love creating dashboards. I love playing with data, but it can take a while. It can take a while to get all the things right. And so our goal is in that 2 or 3 minutes that you have with the data, get you to a 90 to 95% great dashboard. There'll always be something you want to change, so we let you go do that over here. But get you to that place where you're not playing with every single axis and, as you said, the discrete continuous and what's the chart type. We're trying to take all of that toil out and keep the end user focused on what are the questions to answer, what are the big questions to answer.
Okay, and so now I've done this thing, and the composable kind of niche that Ridge is hitting is embedded analytics on the web. I can go take this Ridge that I've constructed, which is the unification of the dashboard with the conversational agent, and embed that thing into my audience's workflow wherever they are, right? So like internally to Action, for example, we use Notion quite a bit. I would love to have the Ridge that answers the question embedded right in the Notion page together with the workflow that's occurring.
Absolutely. And you can do a simple embed, or for people who have multiple customers and want people to see, customers to see their own data, you can do a partitioned embed, which means that your customers only ever see their own data in their browser. One of the interesting things about this this approach is that you get access to that whole sandbox of data. This data set's about a little over 200,000 rows, about 20 fields. And one of the things that I think is really powerful about having that idea of a sandbox of data, not just the data you need exactly for the dashboard, is that you can ask those related questions. So again, we avoided failure rate in this particular dashboard. I didn't think it was the right thing for my users to be seeing, but it's in the data. And so someone can ask that question about failure rate in the data agent. And that's one of the ways I think you get around this problem of dashboard proliferation. You actually give people a big enough sandbox of related data that they can ask those other questions, but you still focus the dashboard on the main story.
I have one technical question on the performance side of this, because that interactive performance, because everything's been loaded into the browser, is super fast and amazing, and I want it yesterday. How about that first load time? Is there a caching of the initial load so it shows up as an image, and then they can start interacting as that sandbox data is loaded in? Or
Now it's about a 3 to 4 second load, so we're actually looking at how to take that out. But we're injecting into the browser when we do that what the dashboard is, the user specific data, whether that's all the data or partition data. DuckDB, there's a bit going in there, so it's a 3 to 4 second load, which is it does take a beat, but I think we have some ways to optimize that, and it may be through an image, or we might just make the interactive faster, which would be my preference.
and then once it's loaded, it is
Once it's loaded.
super fast.
Yeah, the other nice effect of the computation in browser is a financial one. So if you've got people who are using Snowflake and they're pushing queries down to Snowflake, that gets expensive very, very quickly. Whereas if you take that chunk of data and inject it into the browser, and then you're using local hardware to compute, you can do computation all day long, and it never incurs a Snowflake charge.
I've seen a lot of actually new kind of entrants to the market advertising that a key feature of their product is you don't need to fuss with extracts. I've interpreted that as their language of saying we can't do extracts, because to me there's a huge benefit of taking the extract times two. One is it's cheaper. I don't need to pay per compute for Snowflake. And then the other is I'm moving that data set that I'm working with to be immediately proximate to the user, so I get the performance here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another thing we're trying to do on price, which I think is, for people who have been buyers of this, just as innovative, which is not pricing at the hundreds of thousands of dollars level. And if you've been in the market buying this, you know that you're either stuck at something like a 500K buy if you wanted any kind of performance. And the reason was you were buying cores on an on-premise server, maybe a server in the cloud, but you're buying cores to speed up the computation on the server side. And so these deals would just get giant. And in my mind, the price and the performance inhibited the use of data on the web. It's one of the reasons data on the web hasn't really moved forward. What we're doing and what we can do because of our architecture is we're pricing by ridges. So if you need that partitioning, it's what we call a standard plan. It's about $9,800 a year. If you don't need the partitioning, you just want to embed a ridge, same one for everybody, it's about $4,800 a year. And so it's a price point that's much lower. In fact, when I talk to customers, they say, wow, you could price a lot higher. And maybe we should. But what we're really going for is we want to price this to where our customers are getting value. If you need to get something up online to show something in your platform, you can do it at under 10K. And we believe that once people realize it's easier and it's better and it's performant and your users like it instead of hate it, they'll do more and more and more of it. So we're definitely making that play versus trying to say, well, traditionally this was priced at, starting at 200K. So we're just going to price at, 180 and pick up all those customers. We want to see more data on the web. We want data on the web to get better and better and better.
And then back to the kind of initial salvo where we looked at dashboard sprawl, we really maybe only need a half a dozen of these things. And so then in that case, if what I truly need are like 6 anchor use cases, I can build 6 ridges around those and my total cost is 60K. Instead of having to support a whole big infrastructure under the conditions that encourage the type of sprawl that is contrary to what I'm looking for.
And I think there's another piece here for me thinking about this in the enterprise situation where that enterprise BI tool is behind the firewall and working with clients. There's this question of, okay, how do we deploy something that is to our partners, to our customers, that needs to be outside the enterprise firewall and deal with there's just a whole other level of complexity in that environment. Are we using the same platform? Do we need to stand up another instance? All of that. And you're avoiding that. And also the pricing model is so different. You're not charging per user. You're not charging based on cores or subscription.
Pay per use case.
Yeah, exactly. If you get value, we get value. I mean, that's ultimately what you want in pricing is if the customer is getting value from this, and we've had customers who say, "Hey, we're actually gonna charge for this. This experience is so good, we're gonna make revenue from it," which is fantastic if that fits their model. But if our customers are getting value, then we get paid when they get value, not by token, not by number of users, not by any of those things.
All of the incentives are aligned. Okay, and then from the composability perspective, that gives a potential customer the ability to inch in to start with the one use case, pick the most apt use case, start with that, and then you're really just looking at a 10K price tag to vet out this one use case, get it stabilized, and then consider, do I want to move to another? I want to try. I think I'm going to sign up for your beta, and I'm gonna connect it to my Snowflake, and I'm gonna see what I can do. This is really exciting.
So I'm really excited about this too, and I know you have a beta going on, Ellie. So where can people find out more?
Yeah, our website, ridgedata.ai, is a great place to go. You can sign up for the beta there, and we'll get you in. And then feel free to follow me and my co-founder, Jeff Hare, on LinkedIn. We're always on there chatting with folks and seeing what's new out in the market.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jeff and Mosaic, and that's a whole topic area that we didn't even get into. And I think it's his Mosaic work that actually is a big part of everything. It might be nice to bring him back and have a conversation with him.
You should definitely do that. I mean, Mosaic is such a cool library. DuckDB is great. WebAssembly is great. But a lot of what you saw with the interactivity and the data there is in Mosaic. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of people out there, myself included, who have bought acceleration layers for their data to the tune of 6 figures that Mosaic handles natively with no pre-aggregation and no extra work. It's amazing.
Got it. Okay. Well, we'll start with the beta. We'll look at talking to Jeff and maybe bring you back on too. And congratulations for everything you're doing. We look forward to keeping up with it.
Let's make sense of this.
Let's make sense.